Welcome back to the channel. We're going to take a look at my 2008 Ford F-350 that used to be a 6.4. Now, this truck was purchased driving as a 6.4, and it failed me. And now, I've got a Cummins in it. This was an interesting start to a very long, over a year now, probably almost a year and a half now into this, but we got a whole lot to do and a whole lot to talk about, and I put it off for a very long time. So what we have here is a 2000 VP44 Cummins out of it was a 3500. It used to be like a plow truck. I think it had a dump body in the back. It was a cool rig that the guy had, but the truck rusted off around the engine. This motor, from what he told me, has 137,000 on it, which really isn't bad at all, especially for an old Cummins, because these things are quite reliable. But I got an interesting sort of dealio going on. So as you can see, maybe you don't know, this is a third gen manifold off of the 03 to 07 common rails. Now, usually the manifold for these trucks and the ones prior, the turbo flange is in the middle of 3 and 4, and it also comes out kind of this way, kind of towards my heater core. Now the problem is, when I bought a one for a T6 flange, even though this is a stock common rail turbo. I have a bigger turbo in the cab that I'll bring up for you guys pretty shortly here, because I'm going to be running compounds. Now, the reason why I'm not using the stock style, or the second gen style, as a lot of people will call a second gen swap, it's because the turbo did not fit. Now, flipped down, hit the heater core. Flipped up, it would get sucked into the firewall, and it was just a little too close to kind of everything for my liking for how hot that turbo is probably going to get. So my next idea was third gen swap. Now, this is actually, funny enough, this is the stock turbo and the stock manifold off of the common rail that was owned by the guy who bought my manifold. He's doing a second gen swap, and coincidental enough, he actually bought the same exact aftermarket turbo that I have that's going to be going on this truck. And while I was at it, I'm wanting to get a steed speed, but I have a lot more work to do with this truck before I spend $700 on a steed speed. I want to mock up all my coolant piping. Because I am using the Ford intercooler, I'm going to be customizing the boots and the stock kind of tubing to work and see if it works. And I might make a full stainless tubing for both the radiators and the intercooler once I get everything plumbed up. However, I wanted this manifold from them for testing purposes, just so if I can make this work, then I can use this for all the testing and use this to mock up all the piping for the turbos while the other steed speed is getting built, because they're about 8 to 10 weeks out when you place your order. Now, my first idea was having it stick up, because I thought I was just going to run one, and the turbo is just going to sit on here and be happy as a clam. But I think things are changing a little bit. I think I might flip it over, run it the way the stock common rails do, where the turbo is down under. And that's going to be this turbo. This is the stock common rail turbo. And so this one will run off the flange. And then there will be a hot pipe section that will connect the stock turbo to the bigger turbo. Now, I might as well get down and show you what the other turbo looks like. Coming back here, I have this honking turbo. Now, I'm not going to be able to do anything with it today, so I'm just going to leave it back here. And this is just painted black with just high temp paint. I wasn't going to paint the cold side, but ooh, looks like a spider's. No, that's just Teflon tape. I took out the oil feed. I just thought a spider was trying to make my turbo its home, but I think that's just the old Teflon. But I accidentally, when I was shooting this, I accidentally got some on this, so I just said, whatever, we'll just paint the compressor housing too. And if it peels off, because I'm not that worried about it. Eventually I want to get it maybe anodized or maybe taken off and then, better painted. probably after I do all the piping, after it gets knocked around, when it's in like its final sitting spot, that's when I'll paint it like officially. But this turbo is a 64, it's a S4 64.5, so it's 64.5 millimeter compressor wheel. I forget the exhaust, but it is a 110 AR. Now, this was a turbo off of a Duramax originally. Actually, a local guy in town had it. He had it on his Duramax on his pull truck. Ooh, paint job looking rough after sitting. But he had it on his truck he was building to be a pull truck. So I'm hoping that all things go well, and the turbo works out good for me. Now I'm going to go ahead and flip this over and probably put the turbo on it before I do it, so I don't need to do anything fancy. This is what the stock turbo mounted on the manifold looks like. Manifold holds 2 of the studs, and the turbo holds 2 more. While I have this turbo up close to me, it is internally wastegated, which is very important that you have a wastegate when you're running multiple turbos, so you don't have your small turbos over spooling. Now what would happen as you're pushing big exhaust gases, the small one spools up and you get higher into the RPMs, higher into the power band, and your big one will light and it'll push a lot more air and wanting to spin this one even faster. But if you over spool it, you're gonna have a bad time. Now that's what the wastegate does. It'll let all the extra air through, so this spools at exactly what it wants to for max, and all the extra air will just go to the second one, and you go to mid. Now I have my manifold on, flip back over. Now it's kind of a better to do with turbo on. Couldn't even imagine doing it with a heavier turbo, just because it's so awkward. But it looks like that's gonna work the way it sits now. It's pretty tight on the motor mount down there, but it clears. It doesn't hit the, that's in your face, does not hit the inside of the block, so that's good. But I don't know, it's still really tight down there. I have a couple things wrapped around it, but for the most part I think that's gonna end up working there. This can be out of the way, so now maybe I'll bring out the second turbo, see where roughly that one will fit. So it's fairly hard to hold this and mock up with the camera, but it kind of gives you a good idea. Let me stop for a second. So when you lift the hood, it obviously will be a little lower, because ideally it'll kind of sit in this open area and kind of occupy that space, but it kind of needs to be this far forward, so this will, I don't know, maybe like if the compressor wheel was like, the center was like right here, maybe somewhere in that space, I think is where it'll end up being. But anyway, I think I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it at that. I just want to kind of get a start on showing everybody the mock-up of the compound Cummins, and then if anybody knows any good, probably 200 over injectors, let me know, because I'm gonna need them. But thanks for watching, everybody. There will be a lot more with this truck. I'm gonna go into a whole build list and a whole kind of the whole dealio with it. But yeah, just stay tuned, and thanks for watching.